And we are live. Hey, Vicki, how are you? Did you have a great
I'm good.
weekend?
I did. Nice holiday weekend. How about you?
Awesome. Yes.
Good.
Got the barbecue out and was barbecuing almost every day, every meal from Friday on.
Nice. It almost felt a little normal this weekend. A
Yes, it
little bit
did.
of
Actually, it
normalcy,
did.
which was, yeah, it's good.
So, but a quick couple of procedural notes. Just want to let everybody know today we're probably going to cut a little short because Vicki's got a webinar that she's doing at 2 o'clock. So we're going to finish it around 1:50. And then starting this week, we're going to move to one day, one live session a week instead of two. Next week and the following week, we might still do Tuesdays, or you may move it to Wednesdays, but we will post in the group and go from there. So it's all yours, Vicki.
Okay. Well, we're going to focus on PPP today in the time that we have.
What else is new?
No, so what else is new, right? Well, my weekend was almost ruined because, and this kind of keeps happening. Very interesting. The Treasury and SBA continually post guidance, new guidance, late on a Friday night. So
I wonder why.
it was like 10:30, I started seeing it come out. And especially before a holiday weekend was just so interesting. Like they don't want people seeing it, right? So all the accountants and CPAs are all online, with tweeting all the, this is crazy. They're ruining our weekend yet again. And what was really interesting is that the AICPA, which is the governing body, which I've talked to on here before for CPAs, they're working very closely with Congress, have done a great job in advocating for the small businesses and, really how a small business's accounting and taxes work, because it's like the government doesn't fully understand. And they've been a big voice in this with Congress. And they actually came out with a statement that said, everybody enjoy your weekend. This is not that important. So, and this was like 20 pages from the Treasury. So really what that meant was the AICPA knows that Congress is working on it this week, and they're working on specific things to change PPP so that the guidance that came out, although we need to understand it, we don't need to do anything rash or make any changes, come in on Tuesday and start making changes to anyone's PPP planning or spending based on this Treasury guidance, because it's going to change. So then I just said, you know what, I'm going to listen to the AICPA. So anyway, some things that Congress is working on. So, that's kind of changed. The House is saying certain things. The Senate wants other things. So what this final bill is going to look like, we really don't know. But what we're hearing right now is they are going to extend the period of time to use the funds, although we don't know the mechanics of that.
Or even how long?
Well, they're saying 24 weeks.
Oh, now it's up to 24.
Yeah, but it's like you got 10 weeks of payroll essentially. So now it's like, okay, does that mean you can use less each week, or if you have less, like we really don't know any mechanics except that's going to be longer. They're also looking at the period of time, which I believe I've said before here, changing that hard June 30th date where you have to have your employees back or the head count back, changing that to December 31st. So that'll might be much more in line with reopening plans, and realistically, even if, there's other issues in the fall with coronavirus, like that is a much more realistic time period. And then they're also looking at allowing for additional uses of the funds, specifically, which I think is a great idea and totally makes sense, around PPE, so personal protective equipment, and allowing businesses to prepare their workplace for social distancing and other protective measures. So we're a restaurant, right? Like they didn't have the payroll during this period, and that was a big issue. Well, there's things that they're going to need to put in place, capital from a capital nature to improvements that they're going to need to put in place to handle the social distancing requirements that are going to go on for a while. So they could use these funds for that.
Well, it's also for just looking at it from a restaurant's perspective, if social distancing is mandated for every 4 seats or every 2 tables, they're only going to be able to have 1 table. So there's going to be a substantial reduction in revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully this will also take into account to cover that reduction in revenue, because have you heard anything from any of the states with regard to the business interruption insurance claims?
No.
Has there been any changes? Did you hear anything in Jersey?
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
Nope.
we haven't heard anything in Maryland. So I'm thinking, that's going to not come to fruition. So they're going to need to do things. They, restaurants may want to have some kind of thermometer or the ability to take somebody's temperature, whether it's a worker or a patron. So I agree. I think that all these procedural and changes that need to be made, whether there's hard cost or soft cost, that hopefully some of this money will be able to be used for that, and therefore then forgiven in the long run.
Yeah. Even in New Jersey, all the towns have to come up with reopening plan, like outdoor seating plans. All the restaurants have to have outdoor seating plans. But now part of that is, okay, so now you're going to zone their parking lot for outdoor seating. Okay. But then you need tents, you need sun protection, right? Like you need to spend money to enable any of these suggestions that they're allowing, to happen. So now, granted so I say that's great that if they would allow this spending. In reality, what I want to see, we all want to see, is that loans under a certain amount, they just automatically forgive and do not have all these requirements. So we're still waiting on that. I know I keep saying it's coming, but I do believe it's coming this week. One of the things that came up in the guidance that came out on Friday, the biggest thing that came out that is causing still confusion, even amongst CPAs and tax lawyers that are reading through these documents, is the handling of the maximum compensation for owners. So, we know that it was adjusted from 15. So it's the maximum of 2019 payroll or 15,385, which is $100,000 salary. So we know that's the minimum of that. The compensation, there's a compensation cap.
Right.
So what is not clear right now is whether health insurance and retirement contributions are included in that cap or in addition. What it is looking like right now is that for an S Corp or a C Corp owner employee that is making over $100,000, that the compensation is the $15,385 based on actual pay, and that they will be allowed to have the health insurance and retirement plan contributions in addition to that. But for a Schedule C and a partnership, they are not going to be allowed and just capped at 2019, the minimum of the lesser of 2019, the lower of 2019, or 15,385. Which, Schedule C's and partnerships, K1 income, all of that right from the beginning has caused, tremendous confusion in this law, this bill that came out, and even in the guidance. So, and there's been differences in the handling of an owner employee versus what they're considering self-employed. So there does seem to be a difference that could get straightened out in future Q&As or guidance from the Treasury, but that's what it's looking like right now, and was one of the big unknowns on Friday. And it was actually interesting because accountants were reading it and everyone was interpreting it differently.
Right.
Now that is really it's just it's very hard to deal with from our perspective, because it's like, how can something be so hard to interpret that everyone's looking at it differently?
And what the strange thing is, and I think I sent you, or not strange, it's actually concerning to some degree, that I sent you the article about the accounting firms, the big public accounting firms in and around the DC area are gearing up, that do a lot of federal work, are gearing up for audits from the federal government. Doesn't specifically say SBA audits in their postings, but what I'm getting from my contacts within some of the larger regional firms here in this area is that, yeah, they're gearing up for these SBA audits. And I didn't want to interrupt you when you were
Yeah.
talking about that
Mhm.
limitation. Everybody's hoping that there's a limitation. And in actuality, some of these firms are suggesting it.
Mhm.
And they have the ear of the SBA and the Treasury, are suggesting a threshold amount, be either any loan under a certain amount and under is totally forgiven, no audit, no nothing, no extra work, and the banks would love that.
Yeah.
Or X dollars of every loan is forgiven. So it could be like a $300,000 of whatever your loan is. If your loan was
Mhm.
400,000,
Mhm.
you automatically get 300. Then the other 100 you can submit and they can do what they want to do, or you can just pay it back.
Yeah.
But again, everybody's saying things, and you hear one thing from one group, another thing from another group. So
Right.
we just have to sit tight and wait till whatever the final statements are going to be, or the final
Right.
rulings are going to be. But know
Right.
that these things are out there, but there's no guarantee. And people are going to hear all kinds of things, but
Mhm.
nobody knows until the final ruling is in place what it's going to be.
Right. And then, and then to that point too, one of the things that has been clarified is what this forgiveness process is going to look like from the lender perspective. So
Right.
or the process and the time it's going to take to complete. So we've seen the application. It is out. It will take hours to put together. So we've talked about being ready for that. But the lenders are being given their instruction of what this needs to look like. So when you submit an application, the lender has
for forgiveness.
The lender has 60 days to approve it and say you're forgiven or not. If they come back to you and they say we need more information to validate a certain expense, they get, this is the lender, an additional 60 days. And the SBA has a right to also look at it, and they have 90 days to look at it. So where we thought it was going to kind of like, it had to be fully like decided on and forgiven just by the lender in like a 60-day period, it's looking like this can really go on for about 150 days.
And that's 7 months.
Right. And remember, from the day that your 8 weeks is over, the loan portion, right, if you're not forgiven, kicks in. So interest is accruing and the loan portion kicks in. You're supposed to start paying it back in 6 months. So there is a risk that if your forgiveness process takes a really long time for whatever reason on the lender side and the SBA wants to see it, you may actually have to make a payment towards the loan before you're actually forgiven. So there's this overlap. It just doesn't make sense. So, and I just can't imagine. I mean, we're seeing, there's been very large loans that we've seen, but we've also seen very small ones. And it just doesn't make sense that the lenders or anyone would want to take the time. It's just there's not enough ROI, I think, even for the government to create this, utter turmoil when everyone is trying to be forgiven.
And along those lines, because when we were talking about this before we came on live,
mm-hmm.
it's gonna compound the tax aspect of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's just say you do not submit your loan forgiveness until July 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, they have till December 31st, potentially, to do it. If you submit the day after, on July 2nd, they have till January 1st. And no one has talked about, if I remember correctly, no one has talked about the deductibility or non-deductibility of these expenses. And that could come into play with regard to taxes.
Correct.
Tax preparation for the coming year, for 2020.
Or just tax planning, right? If all of a sudden these, you start looking at your tax planning in September, October, if, you're going with the assumption that this is going to be for, how are you planning? Like, are you planning that it's deductible, forgiven?
Plans.
Right.
Different scenarios, and it's going to cost more for your tax planners to do that.
Yeah. And actually the scenario you're saying with the July 1st, submitting for forgiveness, that's actually like just the loans that were deposited early on. I mean, there's still people getting PPP deposits now. So those are going to go way
And what about
out
the people that haven't
after.
applied yet that are ready to apply? We're almost
Exactly.
into June,
Right.
and
Right. So it's just, it's still the same routine here, but so just even, I guess every time they try to clarify something, they create more questions. So hopefully, this week will be the week we get some answers. So that's it for
all
my
right,
side of PPP.
all right. So we will see you again next Tuesday. Are we going to definitely do it next Tuesday?
I'm not sure yet. It'll either be Tuesday or Wednesday.
Well, Jackie will let everybody know by posting
Yes.
it on the group.
Very
So
good.
everybody have a great rest of the week. Stay safe, keep well. Again, Vicki, thank you for everything that you were doing and continue to do. And we'll see you all soon.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.